Hey there, horror movie tea sippers.
The following podcast episode will contain spoilers for the movie we are about to review. If you have not seen the movie and do not wish to have anything ruined prematurely, please do not continue to watch or listen until you have seen the movie.
And welcome to the Horror Movie Tea Podcast. Today, we are covering a listener request, which is Happy Death Day to You. But before we get into the review, let's grab our cups and talk about tea. So, I needed some caffeine, and I am drinking the Zest Tea cinnamon apple tea, which we will link down below. And not sponsored, just if you would like to try it for our tea lovers out there. It has flowery orange Picot black tea. Ooh, that's fancy. I don't know what that is. Apple, tea extract, cinnamon, natural cinnamon flavor, and cinnamon apple flavor. It tastes like fall.
So I am drinking Ito In's matcha green tea with jasmine. And none of us get to know what's in it because I don't have the box anymore and it doesn't say on the back.
How dare! Well, I mean, we know it's got matcha green tea and we know it's got jasmine, so there's that.
What more do you need, right?
Yeah.
This is fine.
Oh.
Totally fine.
But
I've had this one before and it's delicious. It's not that like grassy flavor for green tea that sometimes you get.
Yeah,
It's
typically
actually
sencha.
really- yeah, it's really smooth, and the jasmine's a very light flavor, so it's a nice calming boost of energy.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't make that much sense.
Well, like that focus tea, I think you've tried it. It has like green tea and other stuff in it, but it's like it is a relaxing. It doesn't make you jittery.
Yeah.
Which a lot of tea doesn't. But I know though, one time I had, I think 3 cups of the Zest tea, which I definitely ill-advise against because I was so shaky and full of anxiety. And it's like, tea's not supposed to do that to you. But I had too much.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excitable personalities especially should not have too much caffeine.
Yay! But for our tea sippers out there, brew a cup of tea, sit back, relax, and we hope you enjoy the review. So, Happy Death Day to You is expanding on the concept of Happy Death Day, where it's the second day, literally the day after Tree, which I did look up and see her nickname is spelled Tree, so Tree.
Yeah, that's what the subtitle said too.
Yeah. She just made it out of her Groundhog Day, and I forgot Ryan, I think his name is. Now he's kind of going through a Groundhog Day, but then he ends up sending Tree to another dimension while they're like trying to figure out stuff. And then so she is repeating then the previous day, but
Again.
yeah, but she's in a different dimension where her mom is alive and then Carter is dating Danielle, thank you. And
head of the sorority house.
yes. And so it kind of feels like more like a sci-fi movie than a horror movie, but
A little.
But yeah, so it's like the killer kind of is sort of involved in the movie, but the main part is she has to decide if she wants to stay in this dimension where her mother is alive, or if she wants to choose to be with Carter in the other dimension. And naturally, she chooses to be with Carter, and then she gets returned, and then voila. So for entertainment, I initially put a 7.25, but kind of reflecting on some things, I think I am going to bump it down to a 7. The main reason being is I really, between this movie and the previous movie, I found this one more interesting. But the biggest flaw with this movie is that at the end of this movie, nothing really is accomplished. It's like they kind of go back to square one. It's like Tree already had her growth with the previous movie and, you know, confronting her feelings about the loss of her mother. And, you know, she ends up opening up to her dad when she previously had been ignoring him.
But she did that in the last movie too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because in this movie she didn't. But so this movie is a very similar character growth. But I do like the fact that they try and answer some questions that arose from watching the previous movie. Like the previous movie, it's like, why was she repeating that day? And it's like, for the movie logic, yes, it's because she is trying to find out the killer, but it's like, what's causing it to loop back versus like any other day? Well, this movie tries to explain it, and I guess another part of it is the different characters that they add to, I thought were interesting. It's a very hot and cold movie, because like, to me, even though I did find this movie more interesting, the first movie is still more compelling because it has a point to it. Well, this one, it's more like a fun ride movie. Like, you watch it, but you watching this movie isn't really going to impact your opinion on that world or the previous movie at all. It just... But I do, kind of going down my list though, I did kind of laugh. Tree's reaction whenever she was repeating the day again, just her like screaming at everything. I
think she went a little overboard, but I can understand it for sure.
I mean, she did go overboard, but I mean, that still follows the mood of the previous movie. And I mean, she did repeat the day a lot. And so it's like, if I was back in that situation and I'm like, well, how many times am I going to repeat this day again? I think I would probably have a similar reaction. My only critique, though, is with the previous movie, she started off as kind of a bad person. And through her growth, she becomes a better person because she faced her like emotions and all of that stuff. When it's like this, it's almost like she started over to where it's like she's back to being the bitchy person. But yeah, it's like the growth cycles for both of these movies is so similar. It's like the first movie is like confronting the loss of her mother. And that was like the major thing. Well, this one's like, well, confronting the loss of her mother, but also choosing between her mother and true love. It just, there wasn't, it's like, okay. But I mean, you know, the thing with a sequel is a part of what makes a sequel a good sequel is upping the stakes. And so in this way, it's like they attempted to up the stakes, but then like with the end of the movie, it kind of brings you back to square one, to where it's like, why did that happen? But it's like I really enjoyed the additional characters that they added, like the characters that help Ryan in the lab. They were I really enjoyed seeing that, and then the interactions with the mother, the comedy was pretty good overall. Still, having the twist of the doctor being the killer, that kind of threw me through. I thought that was a fun twist. Kind of like changing up who the killer was in that dimension. Um, for some reason, in this one, I don't know why. If the days were just different enough, but I felt a little bit more tension in this movie. Like whenever she's trying to prevent Lori from dying and stuff like that, or they have a limited time to reset the dimension because the machine's going to get shut off. Like for some reason, I can't explain it, but that just gave me more tension than in the previous movie. But the one thing that really confused me, I don't know if you maybe saw something, Jess, that I missed out on, but the whole thing where the dimension started was when Ryan was being killed, and then they found out that his killer was actually Ryan from a different dimension. And he said that it's like, oh, things are getting weird. You have to kill him too. But it's like they never explain how Ryan got in that loop, and you don't really see the consequences of Tree. I mean, the only consequences is that her reality is different, but she's just in a different dimension. So it's
So they said that when the machine went off in New Ryan's dimension, it knocked him into theirs. And when they set it off that next time, she got knocked into the other dimension a day prior, and that one got sent somewhere else. They weren't sure where.
Oh.
So they did try to explain it. I didn't appreciate that explanation, but they did try to put that in there.
Okay. But so I'd be really interested to know our listeners' and viewers' opinion on this movie compared to the sequel, but compared to the original. Because while the original, I really like the original, and it's one that I will watch multiple times. With this one, I did really like it, and there were some aspects that I can honestly say I liked better than the first one. Like it just felt a little bit more intense. Honestly, whenever she saw her mother and she gave her a hug, I I was like tearing up. I'm like, and like whenever she's saying like goodbye to her mother, like, oh my God, I teared up. So it's like this movie obviously is good at portraying like loss and stuff like that. But it's just it was obviously very quickly like jam-packed together because the explanations aren't that satisfying. And at the end of the day, this movie did not need to happen. Because it's like, yes, it explains things from the previous movie, but at the same time, it doesn't really add to anything by this movie existing. So it's like, I'm kind of conflicted on this movie, but I'm curious to hear what Jess thinks, because sounds like you thought a little less positively about the movie than I did.
I give it a 5.5.
Ooh. Whoa. What was your rating on the other one? I think you had like a 7.5 or 7.
Something like that. It was
Yeah.
a lot higher. I enjoyed the first one way more than this one. This one felt unnecessary all around. Yeah, she got closure with her mom, but she kind of had that before.
Yeah.
So it wasn't needed. There wasn't really any growth from her as far as, character development. And the other characters, what little development they did have, they're in another dimension. So
Yeah.
it has no bearing on her dimension. So it was entirely pointless.
Yep.
So I couldn't have as much fun with it, honestly. Like, the death scenes were, some of them were funny and interesting, but at the same time, why would you pick some of the most painful ways to die? And some of the most devastating to your body ways to die? Because she comes back weaker each time. She's already done this the day prior. 11 times, she said at one point. So she has to die how many ever times this time around just to get all the information and hopefully memorize everything properly. I don't know how she did that. My hat off to her.
Yeah.
But then you go and kill yourself in these horrible ways that are really, really hard on the body when you come back, because a lot of that damage is still there. So why wouldn't you find a better method that's a little less harsh each time you come back? Because you don't know how many chances you get. So why not make it a little easier on yourself when you do go? And then to find out that the killer wasn't even after her to begin with. So the day might have possibly reset with Lori's death, and she might not have had to die.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't make that much sense. There were too many holes, and I had too many questions that I couldn't fully enjoy it.
Well, I think because Lori does die at some point and the day doesn't reset. So I think what might have happened, and of course they don't explain this, this is just speculation, but it seems like she would just keep going on day and day. Like she'd just keep living through that dimension. But the fact of her like killing herself, that at least brings her back to like the starting point in that timeline. But no, I definitely get what you're saying. It is pointless movie. But
so I couldn't fully enjoy it at all. And I just kept getting frustrated with different things that were happening, and it was even more cheesy than the first one. So much cheese. So I can't stomach this one as I can the other one. The other one I can really sink my teeth into, and it's fun to watch, but this one was a bit more obnoxious than anything. Especially since I feel like they could have taken it a slightly different direction, which we'll get to later. And I feel like that would have made a better, more interesting movie.
ooh, I'm excited to hear.
But that's all I got on entertainment. It was just kind of blah for me.
Well, do we want to take another tea break like we did last episode?
Yeah.
You can very much taste the cinnamon with a little bit of apple. I wish for a little bit more apple taste. But I know one time for Christmas, I was gifted a cinnamon honey. And I put the cinnamon honey in with this tea. And ooh, it was so tasty.
That sounds good. Just to make it a bit sweeter.
Yeah, and then of course, the cinnamon complements the cinnamon already in the tea, and it's just like fall in a cup. How's your tea?
It's good. It's again very light, very smooth. It's a good little boost of energy, but still relaxing enough that you're not all jittery and jumping off the walls or anything. It's just a calm, focused energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But so for realism, I would give this movie. It's like it's tough because they add science, it makes it appear more realistic than it is. But at the same time, if you think about it too hard, you're like, okay, that doesn't make much sense. So I'm going to give it a 2.5. But aside from the crazy science that they throw in there to try and explain things, a few things to note that I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely not realistic is, I mean, it's like right in the beginning whenever Ryan gets out of his car and he's walking towards the school and this homeless man pops up from a bush and is like, oh, will you give me money? What homeless person wants to startle a person walking close to them but it's just, no, you would start off coming off really gently and being friendly, and then you would, or you just like stay silent and have like, I don't know. It seemed very much staged. So
for the jump scare.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the fact that it's like, oh, well, since the day's repeating, he has to like keep popping up. I did appreciate the fact that Ryan finally was like, I know you're over there, and kind of like addressed that, but that was just kind of, it was not only unrealistic, but it's just kind of unnecessary. Like they could have thought of something else to do. That didn't seem quite as obviously a jump scare. And then whenever Ryan is like, I'm having that thing where it seems like it's repeating, and then they're like, oh, deja vu, and Tree immediately is like, oh my god, the day is repeating for you, and she just extremely quickly jumped to that conclusion without asking very many questions about like what he was experiencing. She just was like 0 to 10 in like 5 seconds. It's just like,
I think she's been through a bit.
yeah, but it's like, even if you've been through, it's like
I do agree that she should have asked a couple more questions before she jumped to that right off the bat.
Yeah, it just seemed a little bit too quick, but and then I know whenever we were talking before recording, I mentioned it was surprising that Gregory's wife would be involved in murdering Lori. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I could see it going either way, depending on the situation. It's like they don't flesh out his wife that well, so it's hard for me to definitively say whether or not I could see her doing that. I felt like it seemed kind of unlikely, but I know Jess saw it other ways. Yeah, this movie. But yeah, and it's like I should have looked up the science, but on like the multi-dimensional stuff, but it was very much like the science that you're like, okay, that sounds like it could happen, but very unlikely type of thing. So yeah, that's realism for me.
I give it a 2.
Pretty close.
There are just too many questions. And I mean, like when he's walking through and everything, Tree does jump on that bandwagon really, really quick without asking too many questions. They take too long to remove the mask when they knock the killer out when it's the new Ryan. I mean, you'd think after being almost murdered, or actually murdered 11 times, give or take. She said she died 11 times before starting the loop again. That if you knock someone out, you take off their damn mask. Also, again, who uses a baby as a mascot?
Yeah, we looked it up. So if I recall right in the movie, I'm pretty sure it said that they were at Baylor, and we looked up the mascot, and it's a bear.
Yeah.
And I don't know if for like copyright reasons or some sort of restriction they couldn't have a bear, but
there are a few different Baylor schools, I'm sure. So yeah, but again, a baby.
yeah, just like Badger, Baylor Badger. See that? That fits. Or I mean, and people know that badgers are mean, and
Yes.
or there's a ton of animals that start with a B. Barracuda.
Anything else? They could have picked literally anything else.
Yeah.
And it have been better than a baby.
Yeah.
I'm glad they at least made reference to it in the movie, though. Like Ryan actually specifically says, who chooses a baby as a mascot?
But it's like at the same time, it's like whenever movies do that self-righteous, like picking apart their own logic thing, it's just like, really?
Yeah. Yeah. But the fact that they try to explain it with a machine, like,
Then by students.
it came off as a little too cheesy, in my opinion. And then you have to go into the science behind it. And a lot of it just didn't sound right. So it just, and it just bugged me. Then when she's at the hospital, Tree's at the hospital, and bumps into Lori and almost gets killed and everything, and the power goes out, and Lori's like, he cut the power, but you can still see the LED one on the screen in the elevator. So it's like he just stopped it.
Oopsies.
Pretty sure that was a mess up, but it just seemed a little off. And then when they get out of the elevator, there's still lights on here and there. So I'm like,
maybe a backup generator, because I'm pretty sure hospitals
they're
have
supposed to have backup generators.
Yes,
Yeah,
but it's like, why would they light the
power? But
yeah.
I mean, there are just so many questions that I have. Like, he wouldn't have cut the power completely because then there would be issues with that with other patients, and he wants to maintain his cover. So, I mean, I don't get it. And then she really ran to the roof after all these times of doing decent things in the previous movie, for the most part, to evade being murdered. And she ends up running to the roof and then off of it.
And she even is like, rookie move, Tree, and it's just like, it's like they deliberately made her make a stupid move.
Yeah,
I don't.
Which seems out of character for her.
Yeah, it's like she's smart, and the fact that she had to go through that 11 times, I'm pretty sure she
knows what she's doing.
Yeah,
at this point, like, she's pretty decent at it, and we even made mention on the last time we reviewed the first movie that she, for the most part, was doing a good job of at least thinking things out and coming up with a game plan. And it's just frustrating that she kept dying anyway.
Yeah.
That was good. That was a good point in the movie. So for her to make stupid moves like that, it doesn't make sense. And again, with the killing herself in that other loop in horrible ways that are really, really hard on her body every time she keeps trying to come back. So it just doesn't make sense. And they still make mention of, oh, I don't know how many times I'm going to have left, but there's still basically no consequences. So I didn't really feel the urgency there like I did in the first movie. of, the next time could really be my last. I don't have unlimited chances. So they threw a lot of that out the window with this movie. And it doesn't line up right. So also they do horrible gun safety when she does get the cop's gun and she's walking around with her finger on the trigger. And it just caused me great anxiety and made me mad because I'm sitting here like, you're going to shoot yourself or someone you don't want to at this point. And it's going to be a bad thing. And then you're going to have to, if it's not yourself that you shoot, you're going to have to end it in a horrible way again, just to reset it so you can do it better next time. Just take your finger off the trigger, sweetie, when you're walking. But yeah, so my idea of how this movie could have been better, because I do like the premise of the other one a lot better. I feel like they should have stuck with it and just added more people for variables to the loop. Like you have to keep a certain people alive, but you don't necessarily know who is part of that loop. And if just one of them dies, the loop resets. So you have to figure out first who each of these people are and how to keep each of them alive while trying to figure out who the killer or killers are and why it's happening. I feel like that would have been better instead of it's a machine that we have to get to make it work and make it stop closing the loop.
Yeah, I do like the idea where it's like it does still follow the sequel where you have to up the stakes, but it's like it's multiple people, and since she's been through this before, she knows better than anyone what to do in that situation. Yeah.
I mean, even if they left the machine in it as like the main cause for the loop, if they made it to where there's a killer that knows there's a loop going on and is trying to kill different people to try to stop the loop, that would have been fine too. And they just have to like get the machine to stop.
Or like if the killer is going through the same loop with Tree, and so like the killer has a goal to kill particular people or whatever, and so not only does Tree have to figure out who those people are, but the killer is constantly trying to outsmart her whenever they've previously failed in the previous loops. That would be really interesting too. But yeah, honestly, our discussion has made me have a change of heart. And I think because I was looking at my previous rating with Happy Death Day and I rated it a 7. Since there really wasn't a point to this movie, it's like it was a fun ride, but I can see for some people, like a certain logical individual that I know of, I can see it being extremely frustrating. I think I'm going to bump down my rating to a 6.5. It's like
for entertainment.
Yes, for entertainment. It's like I can see they had potential of making a decent sequel, but the execution and how like they tried to logic themselves into answering like it just
What's so frustrating to me is they did have the potential, and again, yeah, you can leave the machine in there as the main cause for why the loop started, but don't have that be the main focus.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating. The execution just fell on its face.
I guess the only other thing that I don't know if they could have pulled it off in the sequel is the fact, we commented that between the first and second movie, Tree really doesn't have much to any growth in the second movie. Like, especially the way that she acts in the beginning, it seems like she kind of like falls back and then works herself back up to the same way that she was in the first movie. So if they had followed our ideas of a sequel, I don't know how they could have also added character growth.
So because she's already had her growth, if they use like the idea that I said, they could follow more other people instead of Tree.
Like maybe Carter.
Growth. Yes, like Carter or Ryan, or I feel bad, but it's other two coworker friends.
Yeah.
That were working on the machine with him. I'm awful with names. But if we followed those two, which were actually kind of funny.
Yeah, they're good characters.
Yeah. And had their growth, then I think that would have been fine. Just, have check back in with Tree now and then to show, she's still trying to figure things out with the loop. She's their main go-to general trying to figure out how to station everyone so they all don't die. But focus more on everybody else. And I feel like that would have been fine.
Yeah, or even to shake things up, even have like if the killer was in the same loop as Tree, have the killer have some sort of growth. Like maybe they started off, like if it's Gregory, he can start off by like trying to kill off Lori. And then as he's going through all of these loops, he kind of like comes to a different realization and is like, well, what am I doing? And, it'd be kind of difficult to hash out, but it's another possibility.
Yeah.
But it's like with sequels, you need to up the stakes, and you also need to continue the character development. It's like and then the problem, I guess my only stipulation though with trying to develop other characters is it depends on if they make Tree the main character again, or if they focus on if Tree was more of a side character, then they wouldn't necessarily need to give her character growth. But if they focus on her just as heavily as the first movie, though, it's really the main person that you're focusing on that needs to go through that growth to make it feel worth it. Because you're essentially writing that journey with her. But anyways, anything else you wanted to add before we close out? Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today, and please comment on what you thought of the movie. We'd be really interested to know. And if you'd like to recommend a movie and keep up to date with our content, you can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and most places that you listen to podcasts.
And if you'd like to support the podcast, please subscribe, like, and share our content. We also have a Teespring if you'd like to support us monetarily. You can find the sites mentioned linked down below. And until the next time, guys, stay safe and stay spoopy. Bye.
Bye.